what are people actually paying for when they're buying this or when they're selling?
How much of the business relies on you? Do you really have a business, or do you have a well-paying job?
Is there one thing that you tend to uncover that absolutely just either kills the deal?
A lot of people treat their business like their personal checking account. When they send me the numbers, it looks like a completely different business. If your name's on every Google review, then you probably don't have a business. You probably have a job.
So welcome to Frank, where in 15 minutes we have an expert answer one of our audience members' questions. And today we're really lucky to be joined by Patrick, who specialises in building and selling HVAC companies. So welcome, Patrick.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really excited to have you on because you've actually been where a lot of our audience is, and that's in the owner-operator seat. And now, you're on the other side. So I think, what I'd love to do is something a bit different today. I'd really actually just love to understand your journey, right? From running Lange's pool care all the way through to selling it. And, specifically when you knew it was time to sell.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a long journey, and I'll try to be brief. So I came from a financial planning background. I owned a financial planning company, sold that in 2007, 2008, and I bought a swimming pool service company. And so most people have a midlife crisis and buy a Corvette. I bought a swimming pool service company and started cleaning swimming pools. And so we grew that rapidly, and we were in a smaller area. We covered a huge area, and I learned people cared more about their swimming pool than they did about their finances. I worked every Christmas, I worked every Thanksgiving, every 4th of July. It was crazy, the amount of work taking care of swimming pools, and it was a lot of work, and it just got to be where it wasn't fun. And so I went to sell it, and we were so big that we covered such a big area, I wasn't able to sell it as one piece. So we split it up into different sections and sold it off. And so as we were building that, though, I bought it as a small route. It was 1 day a week. We grew it, and we were cleaning about 300 pools a week. So we had four or five trucks on the road, and all kind of going in different directions. And that's really a business about margins, right? The margins are very small, and it's a volume-based business. And so we went to sell it, and my oldest son worked for me, and I was going to give it to him. I went to him and said, "Hey, I'm gonna sell this and focus on something else, and I'm gonna give it to you." And he said, "I don't want it. I'm done working outside and being in the rain and the heat and everything else." And so we went to go sell it, and I did. And at the time, we grew it rapidly, right? We were probably in business 5 years or so, and a lot of people came to us, said, "How'd you grow so quickly?" And so I started kind of a consulting business, teaching people how to grow. And primarily it was swimming pools. And then other industries started asking me questions. And I thought, wow, what we're doing in the swimming pool business, you could do in any other business. And so I started a small consulting company, teaching people how to grow. Was at a BNI meeting, and I actually met a business broker. And to be honest with you, I didn't know what a business broker was, never heard of one. And here I'd bought and sold, probably at that point in time, 8 or 9 businesses along the way of my own. And I didn't know a business broker existed. And so I said, "Tell me about it." And he told me what he did. And in the state of Florida, you have to have a real estate license. So I went and got a real estate license, and I was so naive. I went to Century 21, a local residential real estate company, and knocked on their door and said, "Hey, can I be a business broker here?" And they said, "Absolutely, come in." Well, I didn't know they knew less about business brokerage than I did. And so the first year I worked a lot, and I think I made $9,000 the first year. And I think 6 or 7 of that was from selling a few pieces of property, some vacant land that people said, "Hey, you're a realtor, you can sell this too." And so I really made no money in brokerage. Kind of doubled down on it the second year and started selling businesses, read everything I could, studied everything I could, asked everybody everything I could. And then in that journey, I've been a broker now for about 15 years, and probably 7 years into that journey, we moved to North Florida, which you and I were talking about before we started recording. And I was at my son's baseball game, and a guy came to me and said, "Hey, can you sell my heating and air company?" And I said, "Sure." And so I started looking at the numbers, and I thought, wow, instead of selling it, why don't I buy it? So I ended up buying one of my listings, a heating and air company. We were fortunate to grow that over the next couple of years. And I went to sell it. I missed the brokerage world. I love kind of peeling back the onion and looking at businesses and what makes them successful and not successful. And it's just super exciting to me. And so I went to go sell that business, and I realized we were a small company doing under $2 million in sales. There wasn't a lot of people in the marketplace who knew anything about selling a heating and air company specifically, or of that size. If you were doing 20 million, people would line up to help you,
It's
right?
private equity, yeah.
Yeah, doing 2 million, there wasn't anything. And so that was 7 years ago. My son, the same one I tried to give my pool company to, ended up buying the heating and air company from me. Him and my daughter-in-law run it today.
Nice.
And I switched my practice to just the trade, so just heating and air and plumbing. And we have been fortunate in the last 6.5 years. I've sold 167 heating and air companies, and I get to look at a lot of businesses, what works, what doesn't work, and that's how we got here. So I'll kind of shut up there and let you ask questions. That's a lot for me to
Yeah,
cover there.
I mean, that's an amazing segue, and there's a couple of things that I'd love to understand, right? Because as you pointed out, you had no idea what a business broker is, and so I'd just love to kind of a plain English explanation of what a business broker does. And I think the second thing I'd like to touch on is how you get involved in a business.
Yep. So first on what a business broker does, or the easiest way for me to explain it is what a realtor does for houses, we do for business, right? So somebody comes to me when they're ready to sell a business, and we help them value the business, go to market and find a buyer, and help them get through that transition phase.
And I guess touching on that, there's a number of people that listen to this, and they're thinking, okay, I'm ready to sell. I mean, it'd be great just to understand what actually happens when when you go and meet a business. You talk about, you do these valuations, then you take it to market. I guess it'd be great just to understand the start to finish. How long does it take? What does that process actually entail?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first phase is the valuation. And similar to real estate in a house, we use comp data to say what's a business worth. And that comp data is going to look at several things, right? The makeup of the business, how much of it's recurring revenue, is it service and repair versus construction? And I'm talking specifically heating and air, and I've sold bars, restaurants, gas stations, so I mean it applies the same to each one of those. But what we do now, once again, being the trades, is how big of an area do you cover? What are gross sales? How profitable are you, both from a gross profit standpoint and a net income standpoint? How much of the business relies on you? Do you really have a business, or do you have a well-paying job? And so all of those things go into it. We do the valuation first. And the next step is the going to market. And really the hardest part of my job is letting everyone know your business is for sale and no one knows your business, right? So what we do is confidential. We don't want their customers, their competitors, or their employees to know it's for sale, because when that happens in the marketplace, one, there's competitors who would use that for their advantage to make up reasons of why they're selling. Employees get nervous, right? They hear the business is selling, and automatically they think worst case scenario, we're all going to get fired. It's going to be bad. We're closing down. And customers, same thing, right? If you're doing business with someone and you hear, hey, they're selling, well, then you may start looking for an alternative. And so everything we do is confidential. So as a result, it takes a little longer, right? When we go to market, we'll give a general area. Atlanta, Georgia, heating and air company. Here's gross sales, net income. Contact Patrick or Business Modification Group for more information. And we have buyer signed non-disclosure agreements that basically we're going to give them information, make share with other people. We vet the buyer to make sure it's somebody who either has access to capital, right? They're working with a lender, or they're working with someone like you to be able to make sure they can get the financing in place, or they're a cash buyer. And so we vet those things. And then we've prepared a summary for the business. And so we'll give them that summary. It's going to have 3 years of financials. It's going to have a breakdown of the business. It's going to have some key staff, what kind of equipment's included, high level stuff like that. I think this is going to be a good person to take over my legacy. And then from there, it comes offer, then personal meetings, due diligence, and then closing.
And timeline, right? So someone's thinking about this. Are they looking at a 12 to 24 month process? I mean, is this 6 months? I know how long's a piece of string, but yeah, what's the I guess, does it depend on the size of the business? Is there a bit of a rule of thumb?
Yeah, our goal is 3 to 6 months.
Wow. Okay.
The size of the business helps that, right? So if you have a company doing $1.5 million in sales, let's use heating and air again, because that's our wheelhouse. We've got to go to market and really find a buyer. We've got to promote it and get people involved. If you're doing $10 million in sales, I'll pick up the phone and call 10 buyers who I know, and they'll compete against one another and buy it. So size definitely plays an impact. Breakdown of revenue plays an impact. How much of it's residential versus commercial? How much of it's construction versus service? So all those things play in there. And then so does pricing, right? So if back to the real estate example, if you have a $200,000 house and you price it at $500,000, well, it's probably going to take you a long time to sell it. If you've got a $200,000 house and you price it at $210,000 or $220,000, then you'll probably get interest. And it's the same way with businesses. IBBA, International Business Brokers Association, did a study, and they said only 20% of businesses actually listed sell. And I think there's a
Right.
lot that goes into that. Overpricing is one of the key things.
Yeah, I mean, and just kind of deviating a little bit, when you're working with, the owner, the operator who's owned this thing for, 10, 20, 30 years, I think there's an inherent value that they think it's worth. And then there's a reality, right? And so what are people actually paying for when they're buying this or when they're selling, right? Is it EBITDA? Is it growth? Is it operations? Is it all of it? Like, yeah.
All of it. It's going to be based somewhere around on EBITDA and on gross sales,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
With the private equity that's entered the marketplace, and they're in lots of different fields, but oftentimes they're buying gross, right? Because they know what they can do with gross sales. They can apply, their ability to reduce expenses and lower cost of goods and those types of things. And so often their model is going to be based on, hey, the bigger the gross, the better the business for them, because they can fix the bottom line. But typically it's going to be based on that net income that the business produce. And as a buyer, I'm looking at the business and saying, with the income that it's producing, how long is it going to take me to pay it back? And so that's where
Yeah.
the multiple come in.
And then, you're talking about these people on the other side of the table, right? I think you mentioned at 10 million, it's a feeding frenzy. Where you're operating at the moment is, between that 1 to 2 million. Who's in the market buying these sorts of businesses, right? Like, how are you finding them? Is it P roll-up shops? Is it, operators in the market? Yeah, I'd love to get a sense for what that looks like.
Yeah, really, it's all of the above. So when I first moved to the trades, the first 2 years, every business I sold was a mom and pop to another mom and pop, right? Somebody in the town next to them that wants to expand, that type of thing. Private equity entered the space, and there's a lot of consolidation taking place in the industry. So depending on the size of the business, consolidators are huge. But we're also selling a lot of businesses to, so I think we did 24 deals last year. Probably 8 to 10 of those were private equity backed or financial backed consolidators buying them.
And the amount of deals that you did last year that closed, I mean, of those, or of the total, which ones, I think, how many died, right? I guess what I'm trying to understand here is, of all the deals that you're seeing, is there one thing that you tend to uncover that absolutely just either kills the deal, or an owner operator hasn't done something? Yeah, I guess what's happening to cause these deals to fall over?
Well, I think I have one die on the table every day. So I could really give you a list of what that would be. But the first thing is going to be numbers, right? A lot of people treat their business like their personal checking account. And everyone, when we do evaluation, we'll have a phone call first, right? I'll have a phone call with the seller, and they'll say, I've got a business doing $2 million in sales. We're making $300,000 a year. And I'm like, fantastic. Send me the numbers. And when they send me the numbers, it looks like a completely different business, right? So, and they wink. Everyone minimizes taxes, right? Well, at the end of the day, everyone doesn't get real creative to minimize taxes, and everyone doesn't cheat on their taxes, and everyone doesn't run personal expenses through their business. And those are really the things that hurt it the most. Then it comes down to how the business is designed, right? If your name's on every Google review, then you probably don't have a business. You probably have a job. If you can't take a day or a week or a month off, then that's going to have an impact. And so each of those things, cause them to die. But at the end of the day, it's a financial transaction first. And that's going to be the key thing.
So I guess if you've got some of our listeners, they're 12 to 24 months out, you're to give them, a checklist of 1, 2, 3 things to start doing now, right? They've got their eye on the prize of selling. I guess what would they be? And I'd love to understand kind of what impact that would have when it comes time to sell.
So the first thing is pay taxes, right? The more money you can prove, the bigger your sale price can be. It's challenging doing it 12 months prior to closing, because typically a buyer is going to ask for 3 years of financials. That's kind of a norm for the industry. It doesn't get you the highest multiple, but at least helps you get some. That would be the first thing. Second thing is put some systems in place, right? People and processes, so that you can say, hey, when I leave, when you buy this business and I leave, there's still people here that can help you run it. It's not going to go in the ditch the day I buy it. And so putting those things in place is certainly beneficial. And customer concentration would probably be the next thing. A lot of people think, well, I've got these 4 customers that we always work with. That's a great thing. Well, buyer views that as a bad thing if you only have 4 customers.
Yeah. And each one's 25% of your revenue, right? Like it's a pretty big hit if one of them walks away.
Absolutely.
Hey, this has been fantastic, Patrick. I really, really appreciate it.